Good morning, afternoon, or evening, no matter what time zone you're in, and welcome back to Sip&Talk.
It's good to be back.
So I had a bit of a rush getting into the studio this morning, and on the train, I was just glued to this app I found. It's called All-Purpose Notes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it claims to synthesize like the essence of dozens of these super dense reference books. And I gotta say, after 20 minutes, I felt like I just downloaded a whole new set of knowledge. It was amazing.
I hate to be the one to burst your bubble, but you are suffering from what I'd call the instant gratification illusion.
Oh, okay, go on.
You're seeing the conclusions, right? The final, polished structure of the knowledge. You're not getting the messy, difficult process of actually building it. It's like reading a Michelin star chef's recipe and thinking you now have their skills.
Oh, gosh, that is a cold assessment. But, this illusion is incredibly practical. I mean, it saved me literally hundreds of hours. And wait a minute. That's it. That's the whole thing with DeepSeek, isn't it?
How do you mean?
They're giving the entire world that exact same feeling, that shortcut. They're basically saying, look, we don't have the cash for those super expensive NVIDIA H100 chips. But with smart algorithms and, pure efficiency, we can still build a top-tier model.
And they can even distill the knowledge from the bigger models.
Exactly. They can just read the notes from the A-plus student, so to speak.
Your analogy is perfect, actually, because it perfectly frames the central conflict in AI right now. Knowledge distillation, or KD, it really is the ultimate cheat code. It lets these small models mimic the behavior of giant ones.
But is it cheating?
Well, that's the billion-dollar question, isn't it? Literally. Is this just a B student using smart study habits to learn from the A student's notes? Or is this, corporate espionage, a way to destroy the intellectual property that other companies spent billions on?
That's what we have to unpack. This isn't just about code anymore. This is geopolitics. It's market disruption. So today, we're diving into AI knowledge distillation, Leapfrog, or IP theft.
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's start with the basics for everyone listening. If this KD is an AI cheat code, what exactly is happening under the hood? How does a little student model just absorb everything from a giant teacher model?
At its core, it's really a very effective form of model compression. The whole goal is to take this huge, expensive-to-run teacher model, think of it as this, wise old master with a giant brain.
Right.
And you transfer its expertise to a much smaller, much more efficient student model.
Okay, but how? Is it just copying the answers?
That's the fascinating part. It's not just learning the correct answers. So, for example, it's not just learning the hard label, which would be the final answer. This picture is a cat. Any model can do that.
Okay.
Instead, the student learns from something called the soft targets distribution.
Soft targets. Okay, you got to break that down for me. What does that mean in practice?
The soft targets are the teacher model's internal nuances, its uncertainties. So the teacher might be 90% sure the image is a cat, but it might also think there's, say, an 8% chance it's a lynx and a 2% chance it's a small tiger.
So it's not just the final answer, it's the thought process. It's all the other things it considered along the way.
Exactly. Those subtle percentages, even on the wrong answers, they reveal the teacher's complex internal logic. And that's the real knowledge.
But how do you get the small model to even pay attention to that stuff? I mean, the wrong answers.
That's the clever bit. There's a technical parameter called temperature. You can turn it up during training.
Like a thermostat.
Sort of. When you increase the temperature, you force the teacher model to soften its answers. It smooths out the probabilities. Instead of just shouting CUT, it's forced to explain all its subtle reasonings.
So back to your chef analogy. It's not just showing the final dish. It's forcing the chef to explain every little pinch of spice, even the ones that almost didn't make it in.
You've got it. That high temperature forces the student to learn the complex knowledge structure, which is what makes the big model so smart in the first place.
Okay, but wait. If the student is always learning from the teacher, even its uncertainties, doesn't that just create a sophisticated clone? I mean, is that really innovation, or is the student always destined to be a step behind?
That's a critical point. The student will very rarely outperform the teacher on, general benchmarks. But the innovation isn't in raw power, it's in the efficiency. The student model can perform, say, 95% as well as the teacher, but at maybe 1% of the running cost. The strategic value is massive. It improves what we call inference speed, how fast you get an answer, and lets you deploy this powerful AI in places the teacher could never go. On older hardware, on your phone, that efficiency is the innovation.
And that efficiency brings us right to the geopolitical heart of this, because we all know the U.S. restricted advanced chips, right? The NVIDIA H100s. They built this huge hardware wall. So how did a company like DeepSeek use this soft power of distillation to just walk right around it?
The U.S. export controls created a massive, powerful incentive for exactly this kind of algorithmic counter strategy. I mean, many analysts see what DeepSeek did as one of the most successful technical responses to date.
So the game changed?
The game completely changed. The competition shifted from the hardware layer, this compute arms race, to the software and algorithm layer. It became about who could be the cleverest, not just who could spend the most.
So the U.S. restricted access to the gold mine. And the response was to perfect alchemy, to figure out how to turn cheaper stuff into gold.
That is a perfect way to put it. And DeepSeek V3 is the prime exhibit. They didn't just use distillation, to be clear. They also used a very efficient architecture called Mixture of Experts, or MOE. But the combination, I mean, the numbers they released just shook the entire market.
Okay, let's get into it. Hit us with the hard numbers. How big was the disruption?
The cost claims are just staggering. So DeepSeek said they trained their model using only about 2,000 H800 GPUs. That's roughly equivalent to 1,500 of the restricted H100s. And the total training cost was around $5 million.
$5 million. And what's the comparison point for something like GPT-4?
We're talking estimates well north of $100 million. So if their numbers are right, that's a training cost reduction of over 95%.
95%. Wow, that's fundamentally threatening to any business model built on needing $100 million and access to restricted hardware just to get in the game.
And it doesn't stop with training. The running costs, what we call inference, are also way lower because of that MOE architecture you mentioned. Only a tiny fraction of the model is activated for any single query.
And that means cheaper prices for users.
Way cheaper. DeepSeek's price is about $1.10 per million tokens. A leading model like GPT-4o is around $10 per million, so it's not just a little cheaper, it creates a whole parallel ecosystem that is radically more affordable.
So the U.S. built this giant chip moat around its castle. And competitors responded by just digging a hyper-efficient tunnel right under it. It's innovation by necessity.
It's a classic geopolitical paradox. You apply a hard limit, and you unintentionally accelerate your rival's focus on software and efficiency. It proves that knowledge is, well, it's slippery. You can't just build a wall around it.
Okay, so if this knowledge transfer is so powerful, where's the fight? Where do the big Western companies fight back on IP? Is this just clever business, or is it actually, illegal?
This is the legal battlefield right now, and honestly, the traditional laws are really struggling to keep up.
Why is that?
Well, first, copyright law is mostly useless here. The U.S. Copyright Office is very clear that copyright requires human authorship. The outputs of an AI model, they generally don't have that. You can't really copyright them.
So you can't copyright the final cake, even if it tastes exactly the same as yours.
Exactly. So the legal fight has moved to two much stronger areas, contract law and trade secret law.
Okay.
Contract law is the biggest weapon right now. If you look at the terms of service, the TOS, for any major model provider like OpenAI, they explicitly forbid using their API outputs to train a competing model. So if DeepSeek or anyone is proven to have been systematically scraping an API to distill its knowledge, that's a clear breach of contract.
So they're not suing you over the recipe for the cake. They're suing you for violating the library's rules when you checked out the cookbook.
Precisely. And that ties into the second area, trade secret law. Here, you're not focused on the output, but the secret process, the algorithms, the data, the training methods. Normally, reverse engineering a product is legal. The line is crossed if you use improper means to get that secret knowledge, and breaching the terms of service of an API to acquire that knowledge would absolutely be considered improper means. The whole project could be tainted.
That makes the legal risk crystal clear. It's all about how you get the data.
It is. And it also forces a market solution. The big Western companies can't just sue everyone. It's too slow. They have to get better at monitoring their APIs for strange patterns that look like distillation. And, maybe they should even consider offering licenses for a controlled distillation. Monetize the transfer instead of just trying to block it.
Right. If you can't beat them, sell them a license.
It might be the most practical path forward.
So, to bring this all together, what's the final takeaway here?
I think the key finding is that knowledge distillation has proven that smart algorithms and a focus on efficiency can genuinely challenge the dominance of just raw capital and hardware. The A student's knowledge has been compressed, it's been optimized, and now it's being deployed everywhere at a tiny fraction of the cost.
And what does that mean for you if you're listening, if you're a developer or an investor out there?
It means the definition of cutting edge has changed. It's not just about building the biggest, most powerful model anymore. The focus is shifting fast from pure scale to practicality and deployability. Ultra efficiency is the new frontier.
And that leaves us with a final provocative thought to chew on.
I think so. DeepSeek's success is a really potent warning that single-focus hardware restrictions are. Well, they're failing to contain the spread of advanced AI. If a country wants to maintain its leadership, the strategy has to shift. It has to move from just restricting exports to aggressively reinforcing its own domestic talent, its software advantage, and its foundational research. Because knowledge, at the end of the day, is like a gas. It will always expand to fill the container you put it in.
A perfect place to leave it. Thank you for helping us unpack this massive issue today.
My pleasure.
We hope this discussion gave you a lot to think about. Remember, we're not criticizing or discriminating against any country or group. We're just providing objective facts for discussion and encouraging independent thinking. That's what Sip and Talk is all about.
Here.
Be sure to subscribe to the Sip and Talk podcast, and you should also check out our old friend Mickey's YouTube channel for funny memes and the latest travel vlogs.
Always a good watch.
And don't go anywhere. We still have that discussion about the Japan-China commentary coming up in the second half. I just want to give another shout out to Mickey from Mickytolife. His channel is a treasure trove of inspiration, and he's a huge Sip and Talk fan.
Absolutely. Make sure to check him out and maybe even share your awesome podcast intro with him once you've created it. Welcome back to Sip and Talk, everyone. Glad to have you with us for the second half.
Absolutely.
We just finished talking about something completely different. Chinese distillation technology, of all things.
From ancient spirits to, well, geopolitical spirits, I guess.
Exactly. So now we're diving into this recent China-Japan rhetoric storm. And I have to say, the official statements coming out of China, I mean, they're interpreting the Japanese prime minister's words as trying to, and I'm quoting here, overthrow the post-WWII international order.
Yeah.
Isn't that a massive leap?
It absolutely is. And that's the whole problem right there. They take a very specific security policy or, a single statement,
right,
like Japan's defense planning, and they just overextend it. They drag the entire historical narrative into the mix. It's basically a huge logical chump combined with shifting responsibility.
And then there's that other statement that bilateral relations can only stabilize if, and this is another quote, Japan severs ties with fascism and solemnly promises never to develop nuclear weapons. That sounds less like a statement of fact and more like, I don't know, diplomatic blackmail.
You're exactly right. The typical features of this kind of rhetoric are all there. You see blurring of concepts, swapping cause and effect, oversimplifying threats. And then this is the ultimate move, portraying the one doing the coercing as the victim. Logically, the entire argument just, well, it breaks down.
So to put it simply, it's China claims it is being threatened, but they are actually the ones doing the threatening.
Exactly.
The entire narrative is just riddled with holes.
And that's why we're here for this Sip and Talk. We're going to break down these logical fallacies for you, look at how the official Chinese discourse packages propaganda as fact, and analyze the strategic motivations behind it all.
Okay, let's get into it. Let's start right at the trigger event. This whole thing didn't start with, like, a missile test or anything. It began with words spoken in the Japanese parliament.
That's right. It was then Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi. She was addressing a potential conflict over Taiwan, what's called a Taiwan contingency.
And what did she say exactly?
She stated that such a scenario could constitute a survival-threatening situation for Japan, or an SSC. And that acronym, SSC, is really the legal key to this whole thing.
A survival-threatening situation?
Yeah.
Why is that specific jargon so important? Why not just say, hey, that would be really bad for us?
Because SSC is the specific legal trigger that allows Japan to activate its right to exercise collective self-defense.
Ah, okay.
It's all under their 2015 peace and security legislation. So by using that exact phrase, Japan was signaling a really clear break from its old stance of, strategic ambiguity on Taiwan.
So it was them putting their cards on the table, basically saying our survival is tied to this.
Precisely. And the response from Beijing was immediate and very aggressive. You had figures like Victor Gao claiming her remarks were the same as a threatening war against China and try to overthrow the order from 1945.
And there it is. That's the first huge logical flaw we need to talk about, right?
Yeah.
The overgeneralization.
Exactly. Logical flaw number 1, extension. Japan is talking about a conditional defensive posture. If a situation meets this very high legal bar, then we can act defensively.
Right. A big if.
But that conditional stance gets immediately twisted into an unconditional intent for a full-scale attack.
It's like I install a security camera after my neighbor keeps throwing rocks at my fence, and they turn around and accuse me of building an offensive fortress to spy on them.
That is a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And it's not just a distortion. There's another flaw here. It's a non sequitur, a total logic jump.
The jump to World War II?
Yes, blending a modern security policy with the 1945 unconditional surrender. The argument implies that any adjustment Japan makes to its security today somehow challenges the outcome of a war that ended almost 80 years ago. That link just it doesn't make sense unless your only goal is to stir up fear and guilt.
And we should probably stress just how high that legal bar actually is for Japan. It's not like they can just wake up and decide to use force.
Not even close. The legal framework requires 3 incredibly strict conditions. We're talking about a clear threat to the very existence of the Japanese people, that there's no other appropriate way to handle it, and that any source used is the absolute minimum necessary.
So these are huge legal hurdles.
Enormous. To equate that highly constrained defense planning with starting a war is, it's just not an honest argument. It's a deliberate misrepresentation of Japan's legal reality.
Which sets the stage perfectly for the second part of this whole thing, the political demands. This is where it starts to feel like, as I said, moral blackmail.
It does. That demand that Japan must sever its ties with fascism and solemnly promise never to develop nuclear weapons. It's using history as a weapon.
So let's take the first part of that, severing ties with fascism. What does that even mean in modern Japan, a democratic country?
Well, that's the point. It's intentionally vague. It's a vague accusation, an ad hominem attack. The vagueness lets the accuser apply the label to absolutely any action they happen to disagree with.
So the straw man.
A classic straw man argument. They use the historical label of fascism or militarism to attack a democratic country that has fundamentally changed since 1945.
So it's less a critique of policy and more of a character assassination. It's designed to keep Japan perpetually on the back foot, always having to answer for its history.
That's the goal. It's all about narrative control. If Japan makes a defensive move, China can just shout fascism, and suddenly Japan has to defend itself not just militarily, but morally on the world stage.
Okay, that makes a twisted kind of sense. So what about the second part? The demand to promise never to develop nuclear weapons. That seems redundant.
It is. This is logical flaw number 4, a redundant demand. They're asking for a promise that's already been made many times over. The real goal isn't assurance. The goal is restriction.
How so?
Well, Japan has followed its 3 non-nuclear principles for more than 50 years. Not possessing, not producing, not introducing nukes. Plus, they're a signatory to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, the NPT.
So this solemn promise they're asking for is already backed up by layers of domestic and international law. So what's the strategic play here? Why ask for it again?
The strategic goal is to box Japan in, to limit its own internal security debate down the road. By making this promise a condition for statal relations, China is trying to shut down any future discussion Japan might have about its options.
Especially with threats from North Korea or
with China's own rapid nuclear modernization. It's a move to take tools out of Japan's toolbox before they can even think about using them. A diplomatic checkmate before the game really starts.
Wow. Okay, so let's try to pull all this together. This brings us to what I think is the most mind-bending part of this. The threat reversal paradox. This is where the logic just completely eats itself.
This is the absolute core of so much authoritarian rhetoric. It's projection. The basic logic is the person who starts the threat accuses the person being threatened of being the real aggressor.
Let's ground that in the actual situation. Why does Japan even see a Taiwan contingency as a Japan contingency to begin with? Is it just aggression like China claims?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It's based on what you could call strategic inevitability. Just look at a map. The Taiwan Strait is a critical lifeline for Japan's sea lanes, for its energy, for its trade.
Everything comes through there.
Everything. A conflict or a blockade there would choke Japan's economy almost overnight. That is a threat to national survival. That's why the term SSC was used.
So Japan's reasoning is just pragmatic. It's a reaction to a potential, very real threat.
It's a reaction. So let's look at the roles. The threat initiator is the side that openly says it reserves the right to use force. That's in China's anti-secession law, and is constantly applying military pressure.
The military drills, the aircraft sorties.
Thousands of them annually. That is the initiating action. Japan's statement, its defensive planning, is the reaction.
But the propaganda flips it.
The propaganda leap is to condemn Japan's reaction as the original provocation. They completely flip cause and effect for their audience.
So my question is, why do this? What's the gain if so much of the world can see the logical holes?
Because it's essential for their internal narrative. When Japan acts proactively like this, it challenges China's control of the story.
Yeah.
Japan is saying, we see what you're doing, and we are preparing a legal response.
And China can't allow that.
They can't.
Yeah.
They have to immediately relabel Japan's defensive move as something evil like fascism to regain control of the narrative and rally their domestic audience.
But isn't this counterproductive in the long run? Japan has responded by boosting its defense spending, aiming for 2% of GDP. This kind of aggressive talk just seems to prove Japan's point that China is a bullying hegemon.
It's a huge contradiction. The short-term win for them is domestic unity and making it seem riskier for others to intervene. But the long-term loss is that every time they do this, they prove Japan's threat assessment right. The paradox doesn't de-escalate the crisis, it actually accelerates it.
Okay, so for our last section here, let's just focus on the why.
Well,
why choose this kind of flawed rhetoric? Why prioritize a narrative over, facts that hold up?
it really just comes down to the political goals being more important than anything else. The main objective is to shut down external criticism and build up domestic legitimacy. Presenting evidence that holds up to international inspection is a secondary concern.
And the tool they use for that is pretty clear. Selective evidence.
Exactly. They focus intensely on Japan's historical crimes from World War II, which are real, while at the same time completely ignoring or downplaying what China is doing right now.
The military buildup, the constant patrols.
All of it. It's a classic case of confirmation bias in diplomacy. You amplify the facts that fit your story, and you just ignore the rest.
And that gets us to wolf warrior diplomacy. We hear that term all the time. What's the dual purpose of being that aggressive?
It really serves two main functions. The first is external deterrence. By using this extreme language of war and betrayal, they want to raise the perceived cost for Japan and its allies, like the U.S., to get involved in Taiwan. They want to make it look too messy, too dangerous.
And the second purpose is all internal.
Yes, domestic mobilization. It paints Japan as this extremist, morally corrupt enemy, which helps strengthen nationalist feelings at home and justifies more military spending. It creates a very strong us versus them feeling.
So it sounds like a trade-off. They're willing to sacrifice international credibility for what they see as more important short-term goals.
That's the contradiction we want you to see. The more this extreme, logically flawed rhetoric works at home, the more it damages China's image and soft power abroad. Eventually, people around the world start to see the logic gaps, they see the distortions, and it weakens China's ability to actually control the global conversation. The noise just becomes background noise.
So what does this all mean for you listening at home? It means when you see this kind of high-stakes diplomatic language, your first job isn't to pick a side. It's to be an analyst. You have to break down the logical links.
Look for cause and effect.
Exactly. Because as we saw here, the whole argument fell apart right at the point where the threat initiator tried to blame the one reacting defensively.
We always just want to provide the tools for objective analysis. The goal is for you to be able to see past all the noise, focus on verifiable facts and law, and use that independent thinking to really get what's going on. Don't just accept the premise. Always check the logic.
Absolutely. Well, if you enjoyed peeling back the layers of this geopolitical onion with us, be sure to subscribe to the Sip&Talk podcast. And hey, don't forget to check out our old friend Mickey's YouTube channel, Mickytolife. He's got some hilarious memes and the latest travel vlogs. It's great stuff.
Lots of fun over there.
We'll see you all next time.